Welcome to Management 2110's Chapter 9 lecture, based on the readings from the textbook Management, 14th edition by Robbins and Couter. We're going to get started. First, we'll cover the learning objectives for Chapter 9. The first one, we're going to define strategic management and explain why it's important. Next, we're going to explain what managers do during the 6 steps of the strategic management process. Know how to identify your own personal strengths and weaknesses and deal with them. We're going to develop your skill at strategic planning. The third learning objective is to describe the 3 types of corporate strategies. And the fourth is to describe competitive advantage and the competitive strategies organizations use to get it. Then we're going to discuss current strategic management issues. So strategic management is what managers do to develop the organization's strategies. It is an important task involving all the basic management functions: planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. What are the organization strategies? There are the plans for how the organization will do whatever it's in business to do, how it will compete successfully, and how it will attract and satisfy its customers in order to achieve its goals. Now, one term often used in strategic management is business model, which simply is how a company is going to make money. It focuses on 2 things: whether customers will value what the company is providing, and 2, whether the company can make money doing that. So why is strategic management important? There are 3 reasons. The most significant one is that it can make a difference in how well an organization performs. In other words, it appears that the organizations that use strategic management do have higher levels of performance, and that fact makes it pretty important for managers. Another reason it's important has to do with the fact that managers and organizations of all types and sizes face continually changing situations. They cope with this uncertainty by using the strategic management process to examine relevant factors and decide what actions to take. Finally, strategic management is important because organizations are complex and diverse. Each part needs to work together toward achieving the organization's goals. Strategic management helps to do this. Although the first 4 steps describe the planning that must take place, implementation and evaluation are just as important. Even the best strategies can fail if management doesn't implement or evaluate them properly. So here you have the strategic management process. And Exhibit 9-1 illustrates the 6-step process of strategic management, which encompasses strategy, planning, implementation, and evaluation. So first, you're going to identify the organization's current mission, goals, and strategies. Next, you're going to perform a SWOT analysis that encompasses your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Okay, so on the external analysis, those are the opportunities and threats. Internal analysis are your strengths and weaknesses. Then you're going to formulate strategies, implement, and then evaluate. So every organization needs a mission, a statement of its purpose. Defining the mission forces managers to identify what it's in business to do, but sometimes that mission statement can be too limiting. So what should the mission statement include? Exhibit 9-2 describes some of the typical components. I'm just going to leave this up here for a little bit for you note takers. You definitely want the component of customers. That is, who are the firm's customers? Market. Where does the firm compete geographically? Whether the firm has a concern for survival, growth, and profitability. Is the firm committed to growth and financial stability? Or is it the firm's philosophy? Now, what are the firm's basic beliefs, values, and ethical priorities? Then you have the firm's concern for public image. How responsive is the firm to societal and environmental concerns? And then you have products or services. What are the firm's major products or services? Then you have technology. Is the firm technologically current? Or you have self-concept. What are the firm's major competitive advantage and core competencies? And then you have concern for employees. Are employees a valuable asset to the firm? So step 2 is doing an external analysis. Okay, so we're in our SWOT. Analyzing the external environment is a critical step in the strategic management process. Managers do an external analysis so that they know, for instance, what the competition is doing, what pending legislation may affect the organization, or why the labor supply is like in locations where it operates. In an external analysis, managers should examine the economic, demographic, political/legal, socio-cultural, technological, and global components to see the trends and changes. Once they've analyzed the environment, managers need to pinpoint opportunities that the organization can exploit and threats that it must counteract or buffer against. And opportunities are positive trends in the external environment, and threats are the negative trends. So I'm going to say that again. I want you to remember it. Opportunities are positive trends in the external environment, and threats are the negative trends. So now we move on to the internal analysis, which provides important information about an organization's specific resources and capabilities. An organization's resources are its assets, financial, physical, human, and intangible, that it uses to develop, manufacture, and deliver products to customers. They're what the organization has. On the other hand, its capabilities are its skills and abilities in doing the work, activities needed in its business. That's the how it does its work. The major value-creating capabilities of the organization are known as its core competencies. Both resources and core competencies determine the organization's competitive weapons. So after completing an internal analysis, managers should be able to identify organizational strengths and weaknesses. Any activities the organization does well or any unique resources that it has are called strengths. Weaknesses are activities the organization doesn't do well or resources it needs but doesn't possess. The combined external and internal analysis are called the SWOT analysis, an analysis of the organization's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. After completing the SWOT analysis, managers are ready to formulate appropriate strategies. That is, strategies that 1. Exploit an organization's strengths and external opportunities, 2. Buffer or protect the organization from external threats, or 3. Correct critical weaknesses. As managers formulate strategies, they should consider the realities of the external environment and their available resources and capabilities in order to design strategies that will help an organization achieve its goals. The 3 main types of strategies managers will formulate include corporate, competitive, and functional. I'll say that again. The 3 main types of strategies managers will formulate include corporate, competitive, and functional. So we'll describe each shortly. So once strategies are formulated, they must be implemented. No matter how effectively an organization has planned its strategies, performance will suffer if the strategies aren't implemented properly. As we said earlier, organizations use 3 types of strategies: corporate, competitive, and functional. So you see Exhibit 9-3 in your text, and that'll cover the 3. So top-level managers typically are responsible for corporate strategies, middle-level managers for competitive strategies, and lower-level managers for the functional strategies. In this section, we'll look at corporate strategies. So as we said earlier, organizations use 3 types of strategies: corporate, competitive, and functional. So here we have the 9-3 I was referring to a little earlier. That's top-level managers typically are responsible for corporate strategies, as exhibited here. Middle-level managers for competitive strategies. You see that in the center. And the lower-level managers for the functional strategies. You'll see that there at the bottom. So in this section, we'll look at corporate strategies. So corporate strategy is one that determines what businesses a company is in or wants to be in and what it wants to do with those businesses. It's based on the mission and goals of the organization and the roles that each business unit of the organization will play. Okay, so remember this: corporate strategy and organizational strategy that determines what businesses a company is in or wants to be in and what it wants to do with those businesses. So organizations grow by using concentration, vertical integration, horizontal integration, or diversification. An organization that grows using concentration focuses on its primary line of business and increases the number of products offered or markets served in this primary business. A company also may choose to grow by vertical integration, either backwards or forward, or both. In backward vertical integration, the organization becomes its own supplier, so it can control its inputs. In organizational integration, a company grows by combining with competitors. Finally, an organization can grow through diversification, either related or unrelated. Related diversification happens when a company combines with other companies in different but related industries. Unrelated diversification is when a company combines with firms in different and unrelated industries. So, stability and renewal strategies. Examples of stability strategy include continuing to serve the same clients by offering the same product or service, maintaining market share, and sustaining the organization's current business operations. The organization doesn't grow, but doesn't fall behind either. Managers need to develop strategies called renewal strategies, which address declining performance. The two main types of renewal strategies are retrenchment and turnaround strategies. So when an organization's corporate strategy encompasses a number of businesses, managers can manage this collection or portfolio of businesses using a tool called a corporate portfolio matrix. This matrix provides a framework for understanding diverse businesses and helps managers establish priorities for allocating resources. The first portfolio matrix, the BCG matrix, was developed by the Boston Consulting Group, hence the BCG, and introduced the idea that an organization's various businesses could be evaluated and plotted using a 2x2 matrix to identify which ones offered high potential and which were in a drain on organizational resources. Okay, so the horizontal axis represents the market share, low or high, and the vertical axis indicates anticipated market growth, low or high. A business unit is evaluated using a SWOT analysis and placed in one of the four categories listed. It's stars, cash cows, question marks, or dogs. For a small organization in only one line of business or a large organization that has not diversified into different products or markets, its competitive strategy describes how it will compete in its primary or main market. For organizations in multiple businesses, however, each business will have its own competitive strategy that defines its competitive advantage, the products or services it will offer, the customers it wants to reach, and the like. So when an organization is in several different businesses. Those single businesses that are independent and that have their own competitive strategies are referred to as strategic business units, SBUs. Developing an effective competitive strategy requires an understanding of competitive advantage, which is what sets an organization apart. That is, its distinctive edge. That distinctive edge can come from the organization's core competencies by doing something that others cannot do or doing it better than others can do it. If a business is able to continuously improve the quality and reliability of its products, it may have a competitive advantage that can't be taken away. Using design thinking means thinking in unusual ways about what the business is and how it's doing what it's in business to do. Many important ideas in strategic management have come from the work of Michael Porter. One of his major contributions was explaining how managers can create a sustainable competitive advantage. An important part of doing this is an industry analysis, which is done using the five forces model. Okay, here's the five forces. You have the threat of new entrants, the threat of substitutes, bargaining power of buyers, and bargaining power of suppliers, and the current rivalry. In any industry, 5 competitive forces dictate the rules of competition. That's the aforementioned ones I just went over. So together, these 5 forces determine industry, attractiveness, and profitability, which managers assess using the 5 factors listed. When an organization competes on the basis of having the lowest costs or expenses, not prices, in its industry, it's following a cost leadership strategy. A low-cost leader is highly efficient. Overhead is kept to a minimum, and the firm does everything it can do to cut costs. A company that competes by offering unique products that are widely valued by customers is following a differentiation strategy. Product differences may come in from exceptionally high quality, extraordinary service, innovative design, technological capability, or an unusually positive brand image. So practically any successful consumer product or service can be identified as an example of the differentiation strategy. Although these 2 competitive strategies are aimed at the broad market, the final type of competitive strategy, the focus strategy, involves a cost advantage, a cost focus, if you will, or a differentiation advantage, which is a differentiation focus in a narrow segment or niche. Segments can be based on a product variety, customer type, distribution channel, or geographical location. What happens if an organization can't develop a cost or differentiation advantage? Porter called that being stuck in the middle and warned that's not a good place to be. An organization becomes stuck in the middle when its costs are too high to compete with a low-cost leader, or when its products and services aren't differentiated enough to compete with the differentiator. Getting unstuck means choosing which competitive advantage to pursue, and then by doing so by aligning resource capabilities and core competencies. So, we don't cover specific functional strategies in this lecture because you'll cover them in other business courses that you're going to take. So, but know that functional strategies are strategy used by an organization's various functional departments to support the competitive strategy. That's kind of the cross-functionalism we talked about in other lectures. So by definition, top managers are ultimately responsible for every decision and action of every organizational employee. One important role that top managers play is that of a strategic leader. Organizational researchers study leadership in relation to strategic management because an organization's top managers must provide effective strategic leadership. That's the ability to anticipate, envision, maintain flexibility, think strategically, and work with others in the organization to initiate changes that will create a viable and valuable future for the organization. So how can top managers provide effective strategic leadership? 8 key dimensions have been identified. Okay, right here, Exhibit 9-4 is the effective strategic leadership model that illustrates those dimensions. These dimensions include determining the organization's purpose or vision, exploiting and maintaining the organization's core competencies, developing the organization's human capital, creating and sustaining a strong organizational culture, creating and maintaining organizational relationships, reframing prevailing views by asking penetrating questions and questioning assumptions, emphasizing ethical organizational decisions and practices, and establishing appropriately balanced organizational controls. Each dimension encompasses an important part of the strategic management process. Strategic flexibility is the ability to recognize major external changes, to quickly commit resources, and to recognize when a strategic decision isn't working. Given the high uncertain environment that managers face today, strategic flexibility seems absolutely necessary. So Exhibit 9-5, developing strategic flexibility. Some of the techniques are illustrated here. Encourage leadership unity by making sure everyone is on the same page. Keep resources fluid and move them as circumstances warrant. It's kind of resource allocation, if you will. Have the right mindset to explore and understand issues and challenges. Know what's happening with strategies currently being used by monitoring and measuring results. Encourage employees to be open about disclosing and sharing negative information. And get new ideas and perspectives from outside the organization. Sometimes you may not have the answer, but somebody else will. Have multiple alternatives when making strategic decisions. We covered that last lecture as well. Always make sure you employ a little bit of risk management, have contingency plans or some plan Bs. Remember, you want to place weight on alternatives too. And learn from your mistakes. Okay, that's the lessons learned. So managers use e-business strategies to develop a sustainable competitive advantage. Cost leaders can use e-business to lower costs in a variety of ways. For instance, it might use online bidding and order processing to eliminate the need for sales calls and to decrease sales force expenses. It could use a web-based inventory control system that reduces storage costs, or it might use online testing and evaluation of job applicants. A differentiator needs to offer products or services that customers perceive and value as unique. For instance, a business might use internet-based knowledge systems to shorten customer response times, provide rapid online responses to service requests, or automated purchasing and payment systems so that customers have detailed status reports and purchasing histories. Finally, because of the focuser targets a narrow market segment with customized products, it may provide chat rooms or discussion boards for customers to interact with others who have common interests, design niche or websites that target specific groups with specific interests, or use websites to perform standardized office functions such as payroll or budgeting. Now, having an effective customer communication system is an important customer service strategy. Managers should know what's going on with customers. They need to find out what customers liked and didn't like about their purchase encounter, from their interactions with employees to their experience with the actual product or service. It's also important to let customers know if something is going on with the company that might affect future purchase decisions. Finally, an organization's culture is important to providing excellent customer service. This typically requires that employees be trained to provide exceptional customer service. Innovation strategies aren't necessarily focused on just the radical breakthrough products. They can include applying existing technology to new uses. And organizations have successfully used both approaches. What types of innovation strategies do organizations need in today's environment? Those strategies should reflect their innovation philosophy, which is shaped by two strategic decisions: innovation emphasis and innovation timing. An organization that's first to bring a product innovation to the market or to use a new process innovation is called a first mover. Let's say that again. An organization that's first to bring a product innovation to the market or to use a new process innovation is called a first mover. Being a first mover has certain strategic advantages and disadvantages, as shown in Exhibit 9-6 in your text. And here's Exhibit 9-6, an organization that's first to bring a product innovation to the market or to use a new process innovation, as I said earlier, is called a first mover. Being a first mover, as illustrated here, has certain strategic advantages and disadvantages. And these are your advantages and disadvantages. Reputation for being innovative and industry leader is definitely an advantage. Cost and learning benefits, an advantage. Control over scarce resources and keeping competitors from having access to them is definitely an advantage. And opportunity to begin building customer relationships and customer loyalty is absolutely an advantage. Uncertainty over exact direction technology and market will go is a bit of a disadvantage. Risk of competitors imitating innovations, definitely a disadvantage. Financial and strategic risks that are involved are definitely disadvantages. And high development costs is absolutely a disadvantage. So in review of our first learning objective, strategic management is what managers do to develop the organization's strategies. Strategies are the plans for how the organization will do whatever it's in business to do, how it will compete successfully, and how it will attract and satisfy its customers in order to achieve its goals. A business model is how a company is going to make money. Strategic management is important for three reasons. First, it makes a difference in how well organizations perform. Second, it's important for helping managers cope with continually changing situations. And finally, strategic management helps coordinate and focus employees' efforts on what's important. So in review of our second learning objective, the 6 steps in the strategic management process encompass strategy, planning, implementation, and evaluation. So these steps include the following. First, you're going to identify the current mission, goals, and strategies. Second, you're going to do an external analysis. Third, you're going to do an internal analysis. And remember, steps 2 and 3 are collectively known as your SWOT analysis. 4, you're going to formulate strategies. 5, you're going to implement those strategies. And 6, you're going to evaluate those strategies. Strengths are any activities the organization does well or its unique resources. And weaknesses are activities that the organization doesn't do well or resources it needs. And remember that the opportunities are positive trends in the external environment and threats are the negative trends. So in review of our third learning objective, a growth strategy is when the organization expands the number of markets served or products offered either through current or new businesses. The types of growth strategies include concentration, vertical integration, that's backward and forward, horizontal integration, and diversification, which is related and unrelated. A stability strategy is when an organization makes no significant changes in what it's doing. Both renewal strategies, retrenchment, and turnaround address organizational weaknesses leading to performance declines. Remember, the BCG matrix is a way to analyze a company's portfolio of businesses by looking at a business's market share and its industry's anticipated growth rate. And the four categories of the BCG matrix are cash cows, stars, question marks, and dogs. Moving on to reviewing the fourth learning objective, an organization's competitive advantage is what sets it apart, its distinctive edge. A company's competitive advantage becomes the basis for choosing an appropriate competitive strategy. Remember, Porter's 5-force model assesses the 5 competitive forces that dictate the rules of competitive competition in an industry. That's a threat of new entrants, threat of substitutes, bargaining power of buyers, bargaining power of suppliers, and the current rivalry. Porter's 3 competitive strategies are as follows. First, you have your cost leadership. That's competing on the basis of having the lowest costs in the industry. Then you have the differentiation. That's competing on the basis of having unique products that are widely valued by customers. And then finally, you have focus. That's competing in a narrow segment with either a cost advantage or a differentiation advantage. And finishing up by reviewing our final learning objective, managers face 3 current strategic management issues, being strategic leadership, strategic flexibility, and important types of strategies for today's environment. Strategic leadership is the ability to anticipate, envision, maintain flexibility, think strategically, and work with others in the organization to initiate changes that will create a viable and valuable future for the organization, and includes 8 key dimensions. Strategic flexibility, that is the ability to recognize major external environmental changes, to quickly commit resources, and to recognize when a strategic decision isn't working. And it's important because managers often face highly uncertain environments. Managers can use e-business strategies to reduce costs, to differentiate their firm's products and services, to target specific customer groups, or to lower costs by standardizing certain office functions. Another important e-business strategy is the clicks and bricks strategy, which combines online and traditional standalone locations. Strategies managers can use to become more customer-oriented include giving customers what they want, communicating effectively with them, and having a culture that emphasizes customer service. Strategies managers can use to become more innovative include deciding their organization's innovation emphasis, and that's the basic scientific research and product development or process development, and it's innovation timing. That's whether they're a first mover or a follower. Now moving on, and thank you for your participation in the Chapter 9 lecture. Please stay tuned for the Chapter 10 lecture. Until then, check Blackboard for the week's activities and assignments.